The performance of a company, as judged by the outside world, is usually interpreted from its financial statements. These are well understood, respected and documented financial statements which every company has to publish, and these are balance sheets, profit and loss statements and cash flow. This is a communication sent from the company to the outside world, and how we fare on these performance measurements tell the outside world our capabilities. These capabilities get interpreted, and if you are a listed company, based on these performance measurements, your share price fluctuates. If you are not a listed company, your credibility with the bank is based on this. Your taxation is based on this. However, let's look at, in true essence, how do we interpret them normally. Here is it. There are two companies, A and B. A makes profit of 4 crores. B makes a profit of 6 crores. From this point of view, called profit, which one would you select as a better company? Quite likely, it will be B, because B is making 6 crores profit. You can say, I think these people are managing very nicely and they are giving better profits. On top of that, it can also be shown that B was consistently making more profit year on year than A. A had a profit of 3.5 crores last year, while B had a profit of only 4 crores last year. So B has shown a substantial increase in profit. So the trend is also towards increasing profit year on year. From again this point of view, B appears to be a better company than A. This is called an absolute measure. However, let's look at another measure which is called a relative measure. Relative measure is usually relative measures are used to find out how much did the company make by investing what kind of money. So now when we look at the total investments inside the company, we find out that A has made 4 crores as of today, 4 crores by investing 20 crores, while B has made 6 crores after investing 60 crores. Which is a better company? Certainly, B is not a good company anymore. A becomes better. Now what does it say? It says that A has been using its assets better than B. Now the capability of those assets might be just good enough to give him a quantity of 4 crores. It is quantified 4 crores profit. But relatively, 4 crores on 20 crores investment is 20% return. Whereas 6 crores on 60 crores of investment is just 10% return. Now, we know that managers in company A are managing much better than managers in company B. Depending on industry to industry, we can then compare it within the industry. Is this industry capital intensive or not? But that is subject of another matter. Now, this is done, that suddenly after we put investment into picture, A turns out to be a better company. Are we convinced that we have come to a very good conclusion? That both the companies have been correctly identified, both the companies have been correctly analyzed? So profit doesn't tell us the full picture. Yes, it tells us they are doing fine and they are keeping their nose above water. That means they are surviving. But the quality of management, the quality of decision making that we are talking about comes into picture when we see what kind of assets are there at their disposal. And this ability is seen when we look at return on investment figures. Now, both these things tell us that these companies, if both these figures are in the positive and they show a positive trend, we know that the company is doing well. However, there is another measure that comes into play which is called cash flow. Usually, cash flow is called the survival capability of the company. Most of the problems in day-to-day management of a manufacturing company begins with the problems in cash flow. These three statements are well documented, and by the law, every company has to make them and publish it, unless you are a proprietorship, where you may not be required to publish any of these. However, even if a proprietorship company or a small company wants to know how it is doing, it should still have a very strong handle on all these three measurements. Cash flow will tell you how many days can you survive. A company should always keep looking at it to know what kind of oxygen levels are there in the oxygen cylinders. We are more than convinced that these three measures put together tell us in totality how the company is going to perform. How will these measures tell the operations manager what decisions to take? The question I am asking here is, does the operations manager know if he takes a decision, how will it impact its profit? If that decision will impact his ROI, and if it impacts his ROI, will the ROI go up or go down? Similarly, if an operations manager takes a decision, does he know what kind of an impact will it have on its cash flow? Will this increase the cash flow or decrease the cash flow? So we don't doubt these three measures to tell us how the company is doing, but we do doubt that these three measurements cannot be very easily translated into operational decision making. Then there is another aspect to this. Because of the accounting practices, certain parts of our assets have to be put onto our profit and loss or balance sheet in a particular manner. These also lead to a bit of conflicts in operational decision making. One such example is an example of inventory. Inventory comes as an asset on my balance sheet. If there is a growth in my asset, it translates into more profit. Then why are we constantly in operations trying to tell people to reduce the inventory? This I shall discuss shortly, but let me stick to what I mean by inventory. Now, the inventory, if reduced dramatically, will actually translate into a loss in balance sheet. So now what happens is, whenever we are falling short of cash in the company, we are making decisions from the paradigm of reduce inventory. But when we are trying to make a balance sheet and show that we have to make profits, we are saying, okay, inventory is not a problem. How can an operational decision maker oscillate between keep inventory, don't keep inventory? One of the thought process that comes out by understanding these three different equations is one can have different views to the same equation. Somebody may say that it is better to make more profit than to sell cheap cars. However, one thing can be very easily said. The cost figure that is being used in these equations is not there to be calculated. The cost is there to be reduced. In the earlier section, I mentioned how inventory sometimes can be viewed as an asset, as put on our balance sheet and profit and loss statements, and sometimes the same asset can be viewed as a liability because it impacts the cash flow. Let me spend some more time to try and bring out this conflict. But this time, I shall not use the profit and loss statements or our financial accounting statements. Now, we all know that the purpose of the business is, we are now very convinced that the purpose of the business is to make more money, or it should remain healthy. If a business has to remain healthy in the future, it should protect its future earning capability and it should retain its current health while doing its business. So, with an eye on trying to be competitive in the near future, it has to meet certain conditions. But if it has to remain healthy today, it has to meet certain conditions. Let's look at these two conditions from the point of view of inventory. If the business has to remain agile in the future, it should be able to adapt very quickly, in the sense that it should be able to introduce new products, sell quickly, and produce the items which is selling fast. But if it is caught up with huge amounts of inventory which it cannot sell or liquidate or move, it becomes less agile. That means, if this condition of agility has to be met, it should carry less inventory, because the demands of the future are uncertain and we do not know what kind of demand will exist, and based on this demand the product mix may change. To produce to the demand, currently I should carry less inventory. Now, the other side of the healthy part of the business is, I should be healthy now. To be healthy now, I should also protect my sales. To protect my sales, I should carry inventory. The interpretation is like this: I should have my material in stock so that when the demand arises, I am able to sell. Now, one part of my health says be healthy right now, which requires me to hold inventory. The other part says don't hold inventory. Do you understand what kind of a conflict this is creating? A blind understanding of inventory is going to make it very tough for us to balance this act. We can put in so many measurements to make sure that this conflict doesn't exist, but what we'll end up doing is a balancing act, a compromise between both the extremes. One condition is forcing you to keep inventory, the second condition is forcing you to reduce inventory. But the big thing is that both these conditions are necessary conditions. They will need to coexist if the business has to work. Policies and misconceptions based on this conflict will only confuse operations. So we need to simplify our measurements or our understandings of inventory in such a way that this conflict does not arise. We are moving towards a much simplified measurements. Before that, we will also understand the two different environments which are existing in front of us, so that we can choose the better mode of conducting our business, and which shall help us actually simplify our management conflicts.